Last night, we told you about the legal battle between the Washington County Fair Board and 6 horse barn renters, with both sides now suing each other. Tonight, the Fair Board says it closed the barn for repairs, but a former board member says that's not the whole story. WTAP obtained financial records, city billing documents, and a lease agreement between the city and the Fair Board. Records that, combined with renter testimony, raise questions about why the barn was really closed. Our Megan Marshall digs deeper.
The Fair Board's explanation for closing the horse farm was simple. Repairs were needed. But when we started hearing from renters and pulling records like meeting minutes, water bills, and a lease agreement with the city of Marietta, a very different picture began to emerge. One where renters claimed the board blamed them for running up a water bill. The records show they nor the board were ever even responsible for paying. The Washington County Fair Board said back in December it was temporarily closing the horse stalls to renters because of repairs. But former board member Debbie Wright tells WTAP there was never any talk of repairs. Wright was a board member until November of 2025. She says the root of the conflict goes back to a water leak.
This all started back in 2024, right after the fair.
Some talk about a water leak.
When I was doing my chores, that's when I found the water leak.
It was on the other end of this barn.
Then the barn manager happened to stop by later, and I said, yeah, we got a water leak down there.
The leak was reported and documented in board meeting minutes from October and November of 2024.
I reported it over and over and over. I reported it to the president, and they let it go for 6 months.
It wasn't until March that meeting minutes indicated possible action from the board to fix the leak. The minutes read, quote, water pipes and fittings need fixed. Brian Barth has supplies at his house purchased by the board, end quote. Wright says, and meeting minutes reflect, a water bill for $1,600 at the horse barn came up in May.
At that point that they said, kick them out, the horses are using too much water. That's when I got into an argument, and I said, the horses don't drink that much water in a year. This is because of the water leak.
Renter Joyce Vincent also claims the board president pointed the finger at renters.
Why are you raising the rent again? And he said, well, to cover the water bill that you guys run up. No, we didn't run that water bill up. The leak ran that water bill up that they let go.
But records and research contradict the alleged claim that horses drove up that water bill. The Fair Board says a maximum of 20 horses were in the barn at one time in 2025. According to Penn State University Extension, the average horse drinks between 5 to 10 gallons of water per day. WTAP ran the numbers. Even if all 20 horses drank at the maximum rate for the entire billing period, they couldn't come close to accounting for the water usage on that bill. The just over $1,600 water bill covering February and March of 2025 was for more than 200,000 gallons of water. This is 180,000 gallons more than 20 horses could drink in a 2-month period. And records show the board may not have been on the hook for that bill at all.
There is a contract between the city of Marietta and the Fair Board.
Under a lease agreement with the city of Marietta, the Fair Board receives nearly 2.7 million gallons of water each year free of charge as part of an easement agreement that allows the city to operate a water well on fairgrounds property. The city's utility administrator confirmed in writing that the Fair Board does not pay for water, only sewer charges, and that the board did not exceed its water allowance in 2025. WTAP reached out to the Fair Board's attorney for a response, but we have not heard back. Megan Marshall reporting, WTAP News. The case is pending in the Washington County Court of Common Pleas. WTAP will continue to follow this story as it develops. Back to you.